Jay. Don't be boring. I sighed, running a hand through my hair as I leaned against the bar counter. Aiden, my best friend since college, grinned at me, already a drink in hand. I'm not being boring, I muttered. I just wasn't planning on going out tonight. Yeah, and you weren't planning on having a drink either, but here we are. Aiden clinked his whiskey glass against mine, practically forcing me to take a sip. I gave in with a chuckle. He wasn't wrong. I'd been holed up in my apartment for weeks, buried under work and avoiding socializing like the plague. Maybe one night out wouldn't hurt. The Delancey rooftop was the perfect place for a quiet drink. A small, no-frills dive bar with a neon sign that flickered ominously outside. The kind of place where the stools were ripped, the beer was cheap, and the bartender had exactly zero patience for small talk. Just how I liked it. I leaned back against the counter, taking in the familiar scene. A couple of old-timers sat near the jukebox, mumbling to each other over their beers. A few college kids played a lazy game of pool in the corner. And then I saw her. She wasn't playing pool. She wasn't talking to anyone. She was watching me, her eyes golden, not light brown, not hazel golden, catching the dim bar lights in a way that sent an uneasy chill down my spine. She didn't look away. Jay? Aiden nudged me. Dude, you good? I blinked, realizing I'd been staring. Yeah, just who's that? I nodded toward the woman. Aiden followed my gaze and frowned. Who? The woman in the corner booth, I said, lowering my voice. But when I turned back, the booth was empty. No sign of her, no movement, like she had never been there in the first place. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. You sure you're not already drunk? Aiden laughed, patting my back. I forced a chuckle, shaking off the weird feeling creeping over me. Maybe I had imagined her. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe it was nothing. I had no idea I was already caught in a game I didn't even know had started. And she had plans for me. Need another? The bartender's rough voice yanked me out of my thoughts. I blinked, realizing my fingers were still wrapped around my empty glass, gripping it tighter than I should have. Yeah, I muttered, pushing it forward. Aiden was still talking, laughing about something ridiculous, but his voice had faded into the background. My mind kept circling back to that woman, the one with the golden eyes, the one who had been staring at me from the corner booth just minutes ago, and then vanished. I shook my head. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. The bartender slid my fresh whiskey across the bar, and as I reached for it, I froze. She was there again, not at the booth, not across the room, 2 seats away from me at the bar, like she had always been sitting there. She turned her head slowly, meeting my eyes with that same unreadable expression. Then, just as before, she smiled. You seem lost in thought, she said. Her voice was smooth, deliberate, the kind of voice that made you want to lean in just a little closer. But I didn't. Just tired, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Aiden, noticing the exchange, grinned and nudged my arm. Damn, dude, she's talking to you. Try not to screw this up. I ignored him. Something about this wasn't right. The woman swirled her drink, watching me with quiet amusement. Rough day, something like that. Maybe I can make it better. She tilted her head slightly. Let me buy you a drink. I hesitated. It wasn't the offer itself that bothered me. It was the way she said it, like she was testing me. Aiden, of course, wasn't helping. Dude, say yes. You don't turn down a free drink from a pretty girl. I'm good, I said, lifting my whiskey. Already got one. Her smile didn't fade. If anything, it sharpened. Just one drink, she pressed, her golden eyes never leaving mine. Think of it as a way to unwind. I should have said no again. I should have listened to the uncomfortable knot forming in my stomach. But I didn't want to seem paranoid. And Aiden was right, refusing again would make me look like an idiot. Fine. Her smile widened as she turned to the bartender and ordered 2 shots. Something strong, something that burned all the way down. She lifted hers, eyes still locked on me. To new friends, The way she said it, it almost sounded like a promise. I hesitated before clinking my glass against hers. The alcohol was sharp, numbing, but I barely noticed it. Because as soon as I set my glass down, she moved closer, not subtly, not flirtatiously, deliberately. I could feel the warmth of her presence now, the scent of faint perfume mixed with something else I couldn't place. So, Jay, my stomach turned to ice. I never told her my name. I felt my pulse quicken, my mind scrambling for a reasonable explanation. Maybe she overheard Aiden say it earlier. Maybe I mentioned it without realizing. But deep down, I knew better. She already knew who I was, and she had been waiting for me. I felt my stomach tighten. I never told her my name. I glanced at Aiden, expecting him to be just as weirded out, but he was too busy texting someone, completely oblivious to the shift in the atmosphere. I turned back to her, forcing a smile. "How'd you know my name?" She tilted her head slightly, swirling her drink. "You just look like a J." She said it casually, as if it were a joke, but something about the way she smiled didn't sit right with me. "Your friend said it earlier," she added smoothly. "You probably just weren't paying attention." I stared at her for a moment, searching her face for any sign of deception, but she was unreadable, too calm, too sure of herself. Maybe she had heard Aiden say my name. Maybe I was just being paranoid, but something inside me told me to get out. I turned to Aiden. "We should go." "Already?" He frowned. "Dude, it's barely past midnight. I'm just tired," I muttered. The woman, Luna, or whatever her real name was still watching me. "Leaving so soon?" she asked. Her voice was light, teasing, but there was something underneath it, something that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Yeah," I said, standing up quickly. Aiden groaned but followed me out of the bar. I could still feel her watching me as we stepped outside. The night air was cold, crisp. I exhaled sharply, trying to shake off the unease crawling under my skin. "Dude, what was that about?" Aiden asked as we walked down the sidewalk. "That girl was all over you. She knew my name before I told her." That made him pause. "Wait, what?" "I never introduced myself." "But she knew." Aiden frowned, but then shrugged. "Maybe she just heard me say it earlier. Or maybe you're overthinking it." "Maybe, but my gut told me otherwise." I pulled out my phone to order an Uber. The moment I unlocked my screen, a notification popped up. "AirTag detected moving with you." My heart stopped. I stared at my screen, my breath caught in my throat. No. I tapped the notification, opening the tracking details. A blinking blue dot marked my current location, and another dot, moving with me. I froze mid-step. "Jay, what's wrong?" Aiden asked, but his voice felt distant. I frantically patted down my pockets, yanked off my jacket, feeling through every seam. "What the hell are you doing? Someone put an AirTag on me?" I muttered, my voice shaky. Aiden's face drained of color. "Dude, what the hell?" I kept searching, turning my jacket inside out, and then I felt it. Something small, smooth, cold, hidden in the inner lining of my pocket. Pulled it out. A white AirTag. I stared at it, my pulse thudding in my ears. "Luna," I whispered. There was no other explanation. I clenched my jaw and slammed it onto the pavement, stomping on it over and over until I was sure it was shattered. My breathing was uneven, my hands shaking. I looked up, scanning the dark street, half expecting to see her standing under a streetlight, smiling. But she wasn't there. No one was. Just empty sidewalks and the faint hum of cars in the distance. "Let's go," I said quickly, waving down the Uber that had just arrived. I didn't care where Aiden was going. I just needed to get home. The Uber ride was dead silent. I kept checking behind us, watching the road through the back window, convinced I'd see a car following us. But nothing. I tried to tell myself it was over, that I had caught it in time, that I was safe. But when I got home, the real nightmare was waiting for me. The Uber rolled to a stop in front of my apartment building. For a moment, I just sat there, gripping the door handle, trying to shake the unease that had settled deep in my chest. I was home. I was safe. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. "You sure you're good, man?" Aiden asked, his brows furrowed as he glanced at me. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a half-hearted smile. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push it. "All right, just call me if anything weird happens." "Yeah, see you later." I stepped out, shutting the car door behind me, and watched as the Uber pulled away into the night. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. I took a slow breath and started toward my building, my fingers curling around my keys in my pocket. Every nerve in my body was on high alert. I was halfway to my door when I felt it. That heavy, suffocating feeling of being watched. I stopped, my pulse spiking as I glanced around. The street was empty. No movement. No sound except the faint hum of a street lamp buzzing overhead. And then I saw it. A car, parked just across the street. Not running. No headlights. Just sitting there in the dark. A black Link. Old. Rusted in some places. The kind of car that looked like it had been sitting in a junkyard for years, except someone had brought it here. And inside a silhouette. Someone was in the driver's seat. They weren't moving. They weren't doing anything. Just watching. A cold chill ran down my spine. I turned back toward my apartment, forcing my steps to stay calm. Casual. Like I wasn't completely freaking out inside. I reached the front door, shoved my key into the lock, and stepped inside. The second the door clicked shut behind me, I locked every single deadbolt. Then, heart pounding, I bolted up the stairs to my apartment. Inside, I leaned against the door, pressing my ear against the wood, listening. Nothing. But that didn't mean I was alone. I crept to the window, keeping the lights off so I wouldn't be visible, and carefully peeled back the blinds just enough to see outside. The Link was still there. It hadn't moved. My chest tightened. And then, the driver's side window rolled down. I clenched my jaw, my breath catching in my throat. A hand emerged. It was holding something. A knife. My stomach dropped. I snapped the blinds shut, my pulse hammering in my ears. Who the hell was that? Was it her Luna? Or was this someone else? I stumbled backward, grabbing my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unlock it. I should call the cops. But what was I going to say? There's a guy sitting in a car outside my house holding a knife. By the time they showed up, he'd probably be gone. I needed proof. I took a deep breath and carefully opened the blinds just a crack. And my blood ran cold. The car was gone. No headlights. No engine noise. Just gone. Like it had never been there in the first place. I stood there, frozen, my entire body screaming at me that something was very, very wrong. Had I imagined it? No. I knew what I saw. And that meant he knew that I saw him too. A sickening realization settled deep in my gut. I wasn't just being followed. I was being hunted. And this was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every rustle of the wind against my window sent my heart into overdrive. I kept telling myself it was over, that the Link was gone, that whoever was watching me had finally decided to move on. But deep down, I knew better. By morning, my hands were shaking from exhaustion. Coffee did nothing to steady my nerves. I scrolled through my phone, looking for anything. Any trace of Luna. Nothing. Her Instagram? Deleted. Any mentions of her on the bars tagged photos? She wasn't in a single one. I rubbed my temple, frustration growing. Had I imagined all of this? No. I had the AirTag. I had seen the Link. And I wasn't the only one who had noticed something was off. Even Aiden had admitted something felt weird. But none of that explained who she was, or what she wanted. I needed to clear my head, get out of my apartment for a while. I threw on a hoodie, grabbed my keys, and decided to run a few errands. Just some normal tasks, something to make me feel like I wasn't losing my mind. I was gone for about 2 hours. When I got back, my front door was unlocked. I stopped cold. I knew I locked it before I left. Every muscle in my body went stiff as I reached for the doorknob. My breathing was slow, controlled. I pushed the door open. Everything looked normal. No broken windows. No overturned furniture. But the second I stepped inside, I felt it. That unsettling, gut-wrenching feeling that something was off. Then I saw it. A glass of water, sitting on my kitchen counter. Half full. I didn't leave that there. A sharp chill ran down my spine. Someone had been inside my apartment. And they didn't take anything, didn't trash the place, didn't leave a mess. They just wanted me to know they were here. My hands trembled as I backed away, already dialing 911. The operator picked up. 911, what's your emergency? I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay steady. Someone broke into my apartment. The cops arrived within 10 minutes. They checked the place, looked for signs of forced entry. Nothing. No broken locks. No picked door. One of the officers folded his arms. Are you sure you didn't leave the door open? I exhaled sharply, my patience wearing thin. I'm sure. He nodded slowly, exchanging a glance with his partner. They didn't believe me. Without any physical evidence, all they could do was take a report and tell me to call if anything else happened. And just like that, they left. I stood in my empty apartment, my pulse pounding in my ears. Nothing had been taken. Nothing had been damaged. But they had left a message. I can get to you whenever I want. That night, I barricaded my door. I sat by the window watching, waiting, and at exactly 3:12 a.m., car rolled past my building. Slow, deliberate. My breath hitched as I peered through the blinds. The link. My heart slammed against my ribs. I could barely see inside, but I caught a glimpse of the driver's face. A man, middle-aged, sharp features, blank expression, and beside him, a woman in the passenger seat. Her face was obscured by the shadows, but as they passed under a streetlight, I saw them, golden eyes. Luna. She turned her head, locking eyes with me, and then she smiled, like she knew something I didn't, like this was all just a game to her. And then the car sped up, disappearing into the night. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just knew this wasn't over, not even close. And the worst part, I had no idea what they wanted or when they'd be back.